Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to touch an object that the world claims can bend life and death itself? You trudge through a corridor of a forgotten library, the stone floor cool under your feet, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that twist like dancing spirits across the ancient shelves. Dust motes float lazily in the beams of light, and somewhere in the back, the scent of old parchment mingles with something faintly metallic, like an echo of ancient duels long past. You probably won't survive this if curiosity kills cats, but then again, you're human, so that cliché is just teasing you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And yes, I'm really curious. From which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slide your fingers along the spine of a leather-bound tome and feel a faint vibration, as if the book itself is alive, aware of your presence. The margins are filled with scribbles, some in Latin, some in a script that looks suspiciously like it was written backward for secrecy. Historians claim the Hallows originated in medieval Europe, though fringe researchers suggest they were gifts from a long-lost civilization that blended alchemy and early astronomy. Scholarly debate continues over whether these claims are metaphorical or literal. You imagine the Elder Wand first being held by someone whose name has been swallowed by time, a figure who walked in the shadows of kings and sorcerers, leaving behind legends that would ripple across centuries. The resurrection stone might have been a simple polished gem in reality, yet stories imbue it with a pulling power that mortals could not resist, a magical embodiment of our deepest desire to cheat death. Even the Invisibility Cloak, now half myth and half misunderstood physics, hints at technology or magic, so subtle it may be impossible to fully grasp. As you turn the pages, the library creaks under the weight of centuries, and you can almost hear the echo of whispered warnings. Power exacts a price, and curiosity, though delightful, can be perilous. The candle flickers again, almost in rhythm with your pulse, and you pause, imagining the Peveril brothers, those enigmatic medieval figures whose stories blend fact, folklore, and whispers of magic, walking through corridors not unlike this one, each carrying an artifact that would shape destiny. There is a thrill in knowing that somewhere, in some quiet corner of history, these objects might have truly existed, waiting for the next seeker bold enough or foolish enough to find them. Light a mental candle, settle your mind, and allow the texture of the story, the metallic tang of the Elder Wand, the soft glow of the resurrection stone, the elusive shimmer of the cloak, to envelop you as the first chapter of this tale begins. The past feels tactile here, yet unreal, a liminal space where magic and history waltz delicately around each other, inviting you to step closer, to linger, and perhaps to dream of power you will never fully grasp, yet cannot resist imagining. The Elder Wand. Just saying the name out loud sends a shiver down your spine as you trace your fingers along the dusty shelf, imagining it resting somewhere in the shadows, carved from wood older than most kingdoms, humming with barely contained energy. You step closer to a display of faded sketches, each depicting duels that historians have recorded, the sort that left bruises in both body and legend. And you can almost hear the clash of metal and magic echoing faintly in the cold air. The documented duels of the 17th and 18th centuries paint a picture of a wand so feared that its mere ownership inspired envy, betrayal, and sometimes death. Yet fringe sources claim it could communicate with its wielder, choosing its master rather than simply obeying. Scholars still debate whether the wand's reputation was amplified over time, a classic case of historical exaggeration, or if it genuinely bent the rules of magic. You imagine someone in a dimly lit study, quill scratching as they record yet another duel, the wax seal cracking under tension, knowing that possession of the Elder Wand meant not just incredible power, but also a marked life. The very air seems to hum with the stories of those who coveted it. Wizards dueling in moonlit forests, sparks flying, their faces masks of greed, ambition, and fear. Some accounts even suggest the wand carried a will of its own, an eerie consciousness that subtly nudged outcomes, ensuring that those unworthy would falter. Modern historians laugh at the idea, yet the evidence is tantalizing. A series of unlikely victories, duels ended in improbable ways, and artifacts bearing scorch marks in patterns no one could recreate intentionally. You wonder what it would feel like to hold such an instrument, to have your very intentions amplified and challenged at the same time. There's a peculiar, almost tactile sense of history here, and you can't help but lean closer, sniffing the faint odor of old oak and burnt magic in the margins of the sketches. Oddly enough, the Elder Wand's story is riddled with quirky, almost comical incidents. A duel where one participant slipped on a patch of ice, the wand flying out of his hand and landing in a pile of hay, only for his opponent to shrug and declare, "Well, I suppose fate wins again." You chuckle quietly, though it's tinged with unease, realizing that the history of this wand is a blend of fact, folklore, and a dose of chaotic unpredictability. Somewhere in the shadows, you sense its presence, not as a threat, but as a whispering reminder that absolute power, however it manifests, always carries echoes of ambition, fear, and the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of it. The resurrection stone calls to you, though you haven't even touched it yet. A subtle tug in your chest that feels both ancient and deeply personal. You wander to a low, arched window, the moonlight spilling silver across the library floor, and imagine the stone as it was first discovered, possibly a polished black gem tucked into a velvet pouch, small enough to hide in your palm, yet heavy with the weight of impossible longing. Human history is littered with attempts to reverse or stall death, from early Egyptian funerary practices to the Victorian obsession with spiritualism. And here, in this quiet corner of magical lore, the resurrection stone occupies that same eerie space where ritual, grief, and the imagination meet. Fringe stories insist the stone could allow communication with the dead, but scholars debate whether these accounts are literal, metaphorical, or exaggerated by desperate hearts hoping for closure. You picture a young wizard, trembling, whispering the name of a lost loved one, the stone's surface warming under their fingers as a faint shimmer appears, a whisper of a voice, a shadow of a smile. There's a strange, almost hypnotic quality to imagining the dead speaking back. And for a moment you almost forget where you are, caught between disbelief and the tantalizing possibility of magic. In a quirkier anecdote, one medieval record tells of a man who, convinced he could revive his cat, spoke into a small black gem, only to be startled when the family dog barked at what he insisted was the cat's shadow. You chuckle softly, but there's a chill underneath the humor, a reminder that longing for the past can cloud judgment. The stone also carries with it the weight of philosophical questions about life, death, and the ethics of interference. Open debates that still ripple through modern magical and non-magical scholarship. You can almost feel the tension in those debates, like a low hum vibrating through the stone itself, each voice pulling in a different direction. Some insisting the Hallows are symbolic, others swearing to their literal truth. As you linger in the moonlight, a faint draft brushes past, carrying the scent of rain on cobblestones, and you imagine the stone's journey, passed through generations, lost and found, coveted by those who dared hope they could rewrite their own story. It is haunting, seductive, and undeniably human, the desire to grasp what we cannot, to hold back the relentless march of mortality, even if only for a moment. You sit back on the cold stone sill, letting your mind drift with possibilities, feeling the faint pulse of history and legend intertwine, as if the stone itself were waiting for you to decide what you truly crave: closure, power, or perhaps just a story to whisper into the night. The Cloak of Invisibility feels almost laughably simple when you first see its descriptions. Just a length of fabric, soft, heavy, and somehow impossibly smooth. But the stories woven around it are anything but ordinary. You pull aside a velvet curtain in the corner of the library, letting the candlelight glint off a silvery thread, and imagine the cloak draped over a figure, vanishing entirely into the shadows. Historical anecdotes suggest similar garments existed in folklore: invisibility rings, enchanted capes, even optical illusions recorded by Renaissance magicians. Yet debates rage among scholars about whether these accounts were metaphors for cunning, secrecy, or literal magical tools. One quirky story describes a prank in 16th century Venice, where a man supposedly disappeared during carnival, only to be found behind a mask stand, giggling and convinced he had mastered invisibility, a tale that blends whimsy, exaggeration, and the enduring human fascination with going unseen. You run your fingers along the imagined fabric, thinking about the implications, moving through crowded streets unnoticed, slipping past guards, or even just sneaking a midnight snack without detection. Historians note that invisibility has long symbolized social and psychological freedoms, not just magical tricks, while fringe researchers argue that these garments may have harnessed subtle bending of light or early alchemical innovations. As you walk through the library, you feel a thrill imagining yourself under the cloak, silent and unseen, yet profoundly aware of every creak and whisper around you. There's also a playful, almost absurd aspect. One scholar's debate humorously asks whether a true invisibility cloak would also hide its wearer's shadow, prompting heated discussions at academic conferences over centuries. The fabric seems to hum with possibility, a reminder that some legends are meant to tease as much as they instruct, merging human desire for freedom with the allure of magic. You picture secret corridors, narrow stairways, and moonlit gardens where cloaked figures could tread silently, their presence felt only by the faintest disturbance in air or a slightly shifted leaf. And yet, for all its mystery, there's a grounding reality check. Invisibility might grant concealment, but it cannot protect the heart from loneliness, the mind from fear, or the human curiosity that inevitably seeks to uncover what's hidden. A shiver runs through you as you realize that the cloak, like the other Hallows, embodies human ambition and imagination, woven together with threads of both cautionary tales and fantastical possibility. For now, you let yourself linger in the thought of stepping unseen through time, watching centuries unfold silently while the candle flickers, casting shadows that dance like conspiratorial witnesses to your reverie. The Peveril family, shrouded in both myth and medieval records, emerges from the mists of 13th century England like figures etched in smoke and legend. You pace along the library aisle, brushing your fingers over manuscripts that detail estates, heraldic symbols, and cryptic references to artes magicae tucked into the margins, as if the scribes themselves feared prying eyes. Historians agree that the Peverils were real, wealthy landowners, yet fringe accounts hint at a lineage steeped in extraordinary magical practices, rituals whispered about in the corners of cloisters and the hushed corridors of royal courts. Scholars debate whether these claims are exaggerations born from later storytelling or remnants of genuine magical knowledge. One particularly quirky anecdote claims a Peveril ancestor could make crows vanish during tournaments, a spectacle that delighted and terrified onlookers alike. You imagine walking through the stone halls of their ancestral manor, tapestries depicting hunts and battles along the walls, while hidden compartments might have safeguarded relics of power, the Hallows themselves perhaps lying dormant beneath velvet cushions or behind carved oak panels. There's a tangible weight to their story, blending documented wealth with the allure of secret knowledge. The family seems almost archetypal, a touch of historical fact embroidered with the shimmering threads of legend. One curious historical footnote: the Peverils' estates were often caught in legal disputes over inheritance, which some speculate was more than mundane quarrels, possibly subtle contests for magical dominance, or so fringe theorists suggest. You pause at a map, tracing the movement of landholdings and imagining clandestine meetings by candlelight, where strategies for maintaining power could have involved spells as well as alliances. Their legacy is not just wealth, but an aura of intrigue, a reminder that the human desire for influence and immortality has always danced at the intersection of tangible power and imagination. The more you study the manuscripts, the more you feel the pulse of the past, the rustle of heavy robes, the faint smell of incense in stone halls, the quiet tension of those who knew secrets they could not speak aloud. And yet, there's a gentle irony in imagining these mighty figures obsessed with dominance and survival, while you sit in a quiet library centuries later, uncovering their story through ink and imagination, pondering the same questions about mortality, legacy, and the allure of the unknown. It's a rich tapestry of history and speculation, one that teases your curiosity while grounding you in the enduring truth that some families leave more than estates. They leave stories that shimmer at the edge of possibility, daring you to believe a little more than reason allows. Secrets of the Hallows alignment have intrigued both scholars and storytellers for centuries, suggesting that the objects themselves were never random, each positioned in a cosmic dance that mirrors human ambition and fate. You wander to a tall window, the night sky glittering above, and imagine the Elder Wand, Resurrection Stone, and Invisibility Cloak tracing invisible lines across the heavens, their influence subtly shifting events below. Astrologers of old claimed the Peverils timed their discoveries to coincide with rare planetary alignments, though modern debate questions whether these claims were strategic, symbolic, or simply imaginative embellishments. Fringe historians delight in suggesting that certain eclipses and celestial events might have enhanced the Hallows' latent powers, a claim met with amused skepticism in academic circles. You lean against the sill, feeling the faint chill of night air, as your mind paints tableau of medieval wizards reading star charts by candlelight, murmuring incantations under the watchful eye of constellations. There's a certain rhythm to it, a sense that magic, like music or poetry, requires timing and harmony, and that the Hallows' influence may have been less about raw power and more about the subtleties of alignment, cosmic, psychological, and mystical all at once. You can't help but imagine an elaborate, centuries-long chess game, with the Hallows as both pieces and board, manipulated by those bold or foolish, enough to attempt mastery. Quirkier still, some accounts describe townsfolk witnessing strange lights flicker above estates at the height of these alignments, prompting whispers of wand storms or resurrection moons, tales that straddle the line between anecdote and legend. Historically, symbols and talismans have often been imbued with cosmic significance, and here you see the interplay between myth, magic, and interpretation. Debates that continue to this day in scholarly journals and arcane treatises alike. The sensation of standing at this window, absorbing centuries of imagination, history, and rumor, leaves you oddly breathless, aware that every step you take is tracing a path carved by those who lived, hoped, and schemed before you. And now, before we drift further into speculation, let me pause for a moment to invite you to interact. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. With that little connection made, you step back from the window, feeling both the weight and the lightness of what has come before. The Hallows as symbols, as catalysts, and as reminders of the human desire to grasp destiny, even when it teeters just beyond reach. The Hallows cast long shadows over wars, both mundane and magical, threading themselves into history in ways subtle and startling. You wander down a hallway lined with battle maps, imagining the Elder Wand glimpsed in the hands of generals during sieges, guiding the tilt of a sword, or the aim of a catapult with a whisper of unseen influence. Historians note that medieval battles were often won or lost due to intelligence, morale, and timing. Yet fringe sources claim the Hallows occasionally tipped the scales, like hidden hands nudging fate itself. You can almost hear the clang of armor and the distant drum of armies, punctuated by sparks that seem too precise, too controlled to be purely coincidence. One quirky anecdote speaks of a commander in Northern Europe whose strategy appeared inexplicably successful after handling a curious wooden rod. Later theorists suggested it may have been the Elder Wand in disguise, though records are sparse and open to debate. You step closer to the maps, imagining lines of movement tracing not just armies, but the subtle energy of magical artifacts steering outcomes, their presence barely acknowledged in official chronicles. Scholars debate whether these stories are metaphorical interpretations of tactical genius or glimpses of forgotten magic, and you can feel the thrill of standing in the crossroads of legend and history. In quieter moments, the resurrection stone is said to have comforted soldiers, showing fleeting images of loved ones lost, strengthening resolve or sometimes leading to distraction. Proof that even mystical artifacts carry unpredictable consequences. The Invisibility Cloak adds a layer of intrigue, perhaps enabling scouts or messengers to move unseen. Yet its true efficacy in the chaos of war remains a tantalizing question, one often explored in academic circles with equal parts skepticism and fascination. You imagine small acts of heroism or folly influenced by these Hallows. A spy slipping past enemy lines, a duel ending in sudden, improbable victory, or a weary soldier glimpsing a face from the past that steals their courage. It's a strange juxtaposition, raw human effort, strategy, and emotion entwined with whispers of legendary magic, creating a tapestry where fact, folklore, and scholarly debate mingle like candlelight and shadow. Walking past the maps, The air smells faintly of old parchment and iron, and you sense the heartbeat of history pulsing beneath your fingertips. Each story a reminder that power, whether ordinary or magical, is always entwined with the choices and follies of those who wield it. Even centuries later, standing in this quiet room, you feel the weight of unseen influence and the thrill of imagining the Hallows quietly shaping battles long since forgotten. Allegiances, betrayals, and hidden guardians shape the Hallows' journey, and you can feel it as you trace your fingers along the spines of weathered tomes detailing secret societies and obscure lineages. You imagine cloaked figures slipping through narrow alleyways in medieval towns, exchanging whispers over candlelit tables, their loyalty shifting like shadows, and all for the sake of keeping or stealing the Hallows. Historical records confirm the existence of groups sworn to protect relics, from church relic keepers to knightly orders. Yet fringe accounts insist that magical oversight persisted alongside mundane guardianship, a shadow network unseen by ordinary eyes. Scholars debate how much of these tales reflect real intrigue versus allegorical warnings about human greed and ambition. One particularly quirky tale speaks of a guardian who allegedly trained ravens to act as spies, reporting sightings of would-be thieves back to their master. While the veracity is questionable, it illustrates the lengths humans, and perhaps magic, would go to protect what is precious. You wander through the library imagining secret meetings in hidden chambers, coded letters passed beneath the noses of oblivious guards, and double crosses that could topple dynasties as easily as fortunes. The Elder Wand, with its appetite for power, seems to drive betrayal wherever it goes. The Resurrection Stone tempts hearts with grief, creating invisible rifts between allies. And the Invisibility Cloak whispers possibilities that can't always be resisted. It's fascinating and unsettling to realize how history is not only written by victors, but also influenced by those shadows that move unseen, maneuvering objects and decisions into legend. As you linger over a faded sketch of a hidden chamber, you notice the scribbles of past librarians theorizing about the Hallows movements, hinting at secret alliances that intersected with real historical events, prompting debates that continue in scholarly journals today. You imagine the quiet, almost imperceptible tension of lives lived in service or opposition to these objects, the small, intimate betrayals and loyalties that ripple outward, shaping the trajectory of both magic and mundane history. Even as you breathe the musty air, you feel that delicate balance of trust and suspicion, the thrill of power laced with the risk of betrayal, a reminder that even in calm libraries, echoes of human ambition and hidden guardians persist, quietly narrating tales of cunning, courage, and the invisible threads that connect the Hallows to those bold or foolish enough to cross their path. The modern hunt for lost magic is a peculiar blend of obsession, scholarship, and adventure, and you can feel it as you run your fingers along yellowed newspaper clippings, photographs, and handwritten notes scattered across the library table. Collectors, historians, and even curious wizards pursue remnants of the Hallows, with a mix of detective work and whispered legend, leaving no stone unturned, though some stones are undoubtedly enchanted. You imagine a researcher in a cramped apartment, surrounded by maps and antique books, tracing faint inscriptions that may lead to a hidden tomb, while emails from far-off colleagues discuss the plausibility of ancient magical engineering in hushed, speculative tones. Scholars debate whether any of these quests have merit beyond human desire for fame and power, while fringe enthusiasts insist that subtle magical residue, traces of energy left behind by powerful artifacts, can be measured with the right tools. One quirky report details a hobbyist who claimed to detect faint warmth radiating from a supposedly empty vault, only for his cat to walk over it and set off a cascade of improbable coincidences. He insists it's proof of lingering enchantment. Others call it coincidence. You wander through the imagined terrain of the hunt. Abandoned castles, foggy moors, and private estates where relics might lie concealed beneath centuries of dust and secrecy. Even the mundane has a magical flavor. Modern technology sometimes overlaps with old magic, metal detectors, and infrared scanners revealing anomalies that could be structural quirks or subtle enchantments, leaving interpretation open to debate. You envision clandestine meetings at midnight cafes, exchanged codes in book margins, and whispers that the Hallows might manifest differently in our modern world, adapting to new owners, new intentions, and new dangers. The thrill of discovery is tinged with anxiety, a recognition that obsession can cloud judgment. Even those most careful may find themselves haunted by what they seek, much as medieval hunters of relics were tempted by rumor and rumor alone. The Hallows' journey into the contemporary era becomes a mirror of human curiosity and ambition, still echoing the age-old tension between knowledge and power, reality and legend. You pause to imagine handling a fragment of the resurrection stone, tracing the shimmer on the cloak, or holding a wand that hums with history. Each step feels electric, like walking along the edge of possibility, where fact and fiction intertwine. Even in quiet libraries and offices, the modern pursuit of lost magic whispers the same lessons as centuries past. The thrill of discovery is intoxicating. The ethics of possession are complex, and the stories themselves are as powerful as the artifacts they describe, lingering long after the last searcher has gone home. The ultimate choice and the quiet legacy of the Hallows settle around you like a soft, lingering mist as you reflect on the power, desire, and mortality they represent. You sit in the dim glow of candlelight, imagining yourself holding each Hallow in turn. The Elder Wand thrums in your hand with an almost impatient urgency, as though aware of your thoughts and subtly weighing your intentions. The resurrection stone glimmers faintly, promising the impossible reunion of what is lost, yet tugging at your heart in ways that feel profoundly human. And the invisibility cloak folds over your shoulders, a shroud of freedom and secrecy that invites exploration, but reminds you that concealment cannot hide the soul's vulnerabilities. Scholars debate whether these objects were ever more than allegory. Yet fringe accounts argue that glimpses of their power may have been recorded in fleeting shadows and whispered tales, leaving a legacy that is as moral as it is mystical. You reflect on centuries of ambition, conflict, and longing. The duels, the betrayals, the secret guardians, and the seekers who traversed moors, forests, and cities in pursuit of relics that promised mastery over fate. There's a strange intimacy in this thought, a reminder that power and curiosity are intertwined across time, shaping not just individual lives, but the collective human imagination. You can almost hear the echoes of past choices, a Peveril brother holding the Elder Wand and weighing whether to strike or surrender, a mourner clutching the resurrection stone in trembling hope, a clandestine figure slipping under the invisibility cloak to observe what should remain unseen. The quiet legacy of these objects is not merely their material existence, but the reflection they cast on human nature, the lessons they leave behind. Power is seductive yet burdensome. Grief can be exploited yet humanizing, and secrecy can protect yet isolate. You feel the story's soft pulse, like the residual hum of magic or memory, urging patience and contemplation, reminding you that the greatest power may be the wisdom to walk away unconsumed. as the candle flickers, you imagine ordinary people in their everyday lives, unknowingly brushed by the subtle influence of these objects, choices made in quiet moments, glimpses of courage or temptation, the ongoing dance of human aspiration entwined with legend. And finally, you realize that the Hallows are less about wielding magic and more about understanding the delicate balance between desire, mortality, and the small, quiet magic of living fully. You lean back, exhaling slowly, letting the history, myth, and human longing settle around you like a warm, comforting cloak. Knowing that some stories are timeless not because of their spectacle, but because of the reflection they leave in every heart willing to listen. You settle into the soft, quiet moment after the story, letting your body relax as the candlelight fades in your imagination. The echoes of ancient halls, whispered secrets, and the shimmer of magical objects linger in your mind like the faint hum of distant magic, barely audible but always present. You can almost feel the texture of the invisibility cloak brushing over your shoulders, the cold weight of the Elder Wand resting in your hand, and the subtle warmth of the resurrection stone pulsing with memory. Outside, a gentle night wind brushes leaves against windows, and somewhere far away, the faint scent of rain mingles with earth and stone, grounding you in the present, while your imagination drifts across centuries. The story's tension softens now, leaving only reflections of choice, ambition, and longing. The invisible threads that connect every human to the past and to the legends we inherit. You hear the whisper of the library's imagined corridors, each step echoing like a heartbeat, each shadow a gentle reminder of what has been and what could be, had history bent differently. There is calm in this awareness, a soothing knowledge that you are part of a continuum, seekers and dreamers, cautious and bold, all linked by curiosity and the quiet magic of storytelling. Allow yourself to breathe slowly, deeply, feeling the lingering thrill of imagination mingling with the comforting pull of reality. Let the night carry away the echoes, letting your mind float, unfocused yet aware, as the soft hum of life outside merges with the calm pulse of your own thoughts. The Hallows may be distant, perhaps myth, perhaps truth, but their story has settled gently around you, a warm cloak of wonder and reflection. Close your eyes, feel the pulse of history fade softly into the night, and drift, knowing the story will rest with you, quietly inspiring dreams, questions, and perhaps a hint of magic in the morning light.